What's up, collectors? Welcome back to the Criterion Corner. Today on the podcast, we are back in 1932. Universal has already released two of their big horror hits with Dracula and Frankenstein, and Paramount has thrown their hat in the ring with their first pre-code horror film, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But today, we're going to be talking about their follow-up to that film, the 1932 H.G. Wells adaptation, Island of Lost Souls. All right, here we are back again. Episode number 9 of our ongoing podcast, Criterion Corner. Back with me again is my lovely co-host, Connor Nielsen. Welcome back, buddy. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
We are talking about the Island of Lost Souls from 1932, a pre-code horror film. On the commentary, he describes it as an exotic, erotic melodrama, which the erotic part did not translate to me, but apparently at the time, maybe, I don't know. We'll get into it. We'll talk about it. This is Earl C. Kenton directed film. It's got cinematography by Carl Struss, set design by Hans Dreyer, and then all kinds of other exciting stuff. An excellent cast. I don't know if you agree, but I think the cast is really great. I'll give a quick synopsis for those of you who haven't seen the film and are a little interested. We are going to go full spoilers in this podcast, so maybe check it out first. But it is an obsessed scientist conducts profane experiments in evolution, eventually establishing himself as the self-styled demigod to a race of mutant, half-human abominations. Of course, based on the H.G. Wells book, The Island of Dr. Moreau, but I think it takes quite a few liberties. This is my second time seeing it. I had seen it last year, I think. Last year or the year before, in one of my October watch-throughs, I watched it, and I quite enjoyed it. So I'm the one who picked this for this week, because I wanted Connor. I know Connor's already seen this, but I never got to discuss it with you. So I'm glad you're here. Let's talk about Island of Lost Souls. What was what's your history with this film? What's your first impression of it the first time you saw it?
So my history with this, it's funny that we're talking about this as our October pick. By the way, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Because I watched this 2 years ago when we did Adventure Through November. It was after the Spooktober month, and I was just, both of us independently had felt the need to watch some adventure movies. And I figured this was, it certainly, kind of fits that pre-code horror bill. But at the same time, it's still an island. There's, voyaging and ships and ports and exotic locations.
Oh, yeah, I definitely get the adventure vibe from it.
It's, if you're watching a bunch of adventure, you maybe want to have a little bit of variety in there, and this kind of gives a little bit of the horror flavor to the adventure mold. I think something like Creature from the Black Lagoon, much later, of course, also fits that bill, although these two, I think, stand distinct from one another. But actually, my first time watching this, it became an unintentional Charles Laughton double feature. I'd only seen him one other time. When I watched Spartacus, he is, in my eyes, probably the best thing about Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus. He was very memorable in that. Not a huge fan of that movie, but I liked him quite a bit. And then when it came to that night, I watched Island of Lost Souls, and then the very next thing I watched was Mutiny on the Bounty, where he plays Captain Bligh. And that night, I became a Charles Laughton fan.
He's great. I think
not
he's
to show
the best
my
thing
hand.
about this movie.
Yeah, he's the best thing. So that's my history with this. This was also my second time watching it, and I actually watched this the first time on your recommendation, and now this is the second time I'm watching this on your recommendation. So I guess just in my heart of hearts,
it's a DJ movie.
DJ movie, yeah. Like it's one of those things where when this jewel case, when I see its spine on the shelf, I'm like, that's DJ occupying a little bit of my home.
See a little DJ face of it. Yeah, darn it, I'm gonna make Connor like this movie. And it wasn't even like me trying to make you like it. Like I still don't know your thoughts on it. But Yeah, I think because I had just watched it that year in 2021 for October for our Spooktober list, and then I recommended it to you, and you watched it the next month. And I wanted to do this one this month because I wanted to do something spooky for October, and also I didn't know this until after I picked it, but I'm gonna pretend like I did. This was released on Halloween 1932, according to the commentary. So there you go. It's very appropriate. Love this cover, by the way. This is one of my favorite designs, one of my favorite Criterion designs, and it runs through the whole thing. The whole booklet looks incredible. Usually, I mean, not usually, but a lot of times they don't go into such detail throughout the booklet and everything. But this one's got artwork and designs all the way through it. It looks really cool, and one of the coolest Criterion menus, I think. I
agree.
The menu's
I love how they carry that through to the menu.
Yeah, you
not exactly what I would think just looking at the movie, but it fits very well, and I love how they, put color to it, but it's muted colors. It's not exactly pop.
Interestingly, it's the orange and green combo, which I've been watching through the Pre-Code Horror Collection on the Criterion channel, and two films in that collection. This is in that collection as well, but two of the other films are both directed by Michael Curtiz, and they both utilize two-color Technicolor, which is mostly it's technically red and green, but most of it reads orange and green, so they can get a lot of skin tones and a lot of eerie green colors. So it kind of matches this, which is pretty cool.
That's cool.
Really enjoying making it through that collection. We're almost done. We've only got 2 films left. It's 13 films in that collection. So it was really cool going back to this after having all of that knowledge of that era of all the other pre-code horror films that are coming out. All those films are from 31 and 32. I think maybe a couple at the very end or a little bit later, but yeah, they so many good movies came out in 32. So many good horror films. I was so surprised. It's crazy how many bangers, as the kids say, came out that year. I think this one's really good. I like it. I think it's genuinely creepy. I think at the time it would have been terrifying. Apparently, supposedly, according to the essay in there, people were vomiting in their seats because it was so grotesque. And that was even after. I mean, we got to be thankful that we have this, because this is an incomplete film, or could have been. Like, they cut so much stuff out of it with the censors, and it was banned in like 12 different countries. And
it was banned, and
the complete
regional stuff. Yeah, like regionally, you would see different versions of this, which I thought was by the 30s we wouldn't be doing that anymore, but we were.
Oh, they hacked it to pieces. Any mention of or showing of the vivisection scenes, there's 2 scenes, they cut those out. Any mention to him like pretending to be God or playing God, they cut those out. Couldn't have any of that. That was too much, which is hilarious, because like that's the point. It always drives me nuts when like satires, people, I don't know, isn't that such a weird thing where people are like, this is horrible, we can't have this, but it's like, but you're still doing the things that it's telling you not to do. But that's not horrible, but seeing it in a movie is somehow horrible. It's like, that's the point. Let's get into the direction and the filmmaking of it, because I don't think this director did anything else of note. I looked through his page, and there's a couple things, but like I hadn't heard of anything, and they weren't like super highly rated. What do you know about Kenton?
Nothing. I know nothing. I looked him up, and I saw that he did House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula.
Yeah, he did some of the later
regarded
Universal.
As 2 of the worst Universal monster movies ever.
That's where they started embracing the silliness and the crossovers and stuff.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
I mean, it's past Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, which was, I think, the first like big crossover, and it was a big hit.
Yeah,
and they're like, great, let's roll on this novelty while we can. And apparently, if it's got house in the title, that's one of the stinkers.
Yeah, don't go unless it's just House from Japan, because that's an incredible.
That movie rules. Everyone should watch that.
Every Halloween, everyone should watch that. I think I'm going to try to show that to some friends this Halloween. But yeah, I couldn't tell you much about Kenton. Like, I don't know how much is him and how much is a cinematographer, because I love the cinematography in this. I don't know what exactly Kenton was involved in. Apparently, he didn't get along with people on the set, and there's some stories about him getting into fistfights with the Panther Woman's boyfriend, who kept like coming on set and stuff. Very strange. There's a lot of weird tidbits in that commentary that I listened to. for this film. I would much rather talk about the cinematographer if you don't have anything to say about about the director. Because I know you have stuff to say about the cinematographer.
I mean, the cinematographer is Mr. Stress, my boy who shot Sunrise.
Yeah.
Woo!
I saw that and I was like, Connor's going to be excited about that as soon as he finds out.
This is a bit of a reunion for the first for the winners of the Best Picture awards at the first Academy Awards, because you have Struss, who won cinematography for Sunrise, which won.
Gorgeous.
Yes, absolutely. And that was one of the Best Picture winners.
I say like I've seen any of the other pictures that year, but whatever.
The other Best Picture winner, the canonical Best Picture winner, is Wings.
Yeah.
Which actually the lead of this film, Richard Arlen, was one of the 3 leads of Wings. So there
you go. I wonder if they knew each other at all, or like, because I don't know how. I guess they would have had to have seen each other a little bit, maybe. But yeah, Karl Struss is amazing in this. He's also the cinematographer for The Great Dictator, Charlie Chaplin film, which I've not seen yet. Very remiss in that. I got to check that one out. But yeah, he's great in this. Love all of the stuff he's doing. He's doing everything, man. He's got these like tight, close quarters, like cramped framing with like plants coming in everywhere, and like beastmen peering in from like corners, and like he's using like perspective, and he's got such a great use of shadows, which makes perfect sense because he's coming off silent films, and he's got these like, and we'll get into the set design, but that like goes hand in hand with the cinematography, in my opinion, because I think that set is one of the coolest sets I've ever seen, yes. Like the compound on the island, but he's using all these shadows.
He'll use bars silhouetted.
Yeah, prison bars, like leaving casting shadows on people, and then he'll use like the reflections. There's like this pool, and he's like, there's literal reflections in the pool, but then there's also that like rippling effect on the building that happens when you're in like an indoor pool, you know, that like, yes. It looks so good. It's so pretty. And I just love the atmosphere of this film. I love the super high contrast lighting. Like it's very atmospheric. People are like half lit, like, and there's all these like vignette of shadows around. I don't know. It's how I want a silent film to look. It looks really cool. And I know that some of that influence is from the German Expressionism. The German Expressionism movement inspired a lot of these pre-code horror films, and you can see it in this one. You can see it in like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but this one especially, I don't know, I just really love the look of it. That paired with like the adventure feel that you were talking about, like this feels like one of those early adventure films like Tarzan the Ape Man or King Solomon's Mines. Like he's even got like the white suit on the whole time. And I don't know, man. This is a DJ movie. I know you said that just because I recommended it, but it is. I don't know. The horror films I like the most are fantasy horror or sci-fi horror. And this kind of walks that line a little bit. I love all the trappings of this movie, and I love just the atmosphere and the feel of it.
I guess we should say this is not a Universal monster movie.
Paramount.
It's a Paramount picture. And this is around the time where right after Dracula is a massive hit. It was a big risk and a massive hit. Then horror really started catching on. So you have Universal puts Frankenstein in productions, but right around the exact same time is when Paramount gets on with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And
which is amazing. I highly recommend it.
I really want to see that. And this is their follow-up to that. So this is their second effort, and followed, on the heels of Frankenstein, which was Universal's second effort. And I believe this is the same year as The Mummy, which is, I think, the third of the Universal monsters. It's not Universal and monsters, and like MGM is doing Freaks. So it's like you kind of have like horror is in the water, but retroactively, we all kind of look at this as the Universal era of horror. And I think it's because they were the trendsetters. And it's interesting that when you pop this disc in, the first logo you see after the Criterion logo is the Universal one, because I guess they bought the rights.
I guess so.
So it's like we retroactively call this a Universal monster movie when it's not. And I think the reason is because it does kind of, I don't know, if you are a person who wants to acquire a library, right, and you want to have a catalog, and Warner Brothers acquired RKO's catalog, it would make sense that Universal would want to acquire this, because this does just fit in line with the universal house style of this time. And so I actually have a checklist here.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
So
see if I
you
agree with
have
this.
a boring, generic white guy lead. In this case, we have Richard Arlen as, I think his name is Paper. And then, I mean, he's not as bad as
Parker.
Oh, my bad. My bad. I thought his name was Wallpaper.
His name's actually
but,
Edward. Parker's his last name, but yes.
Yeah. Edward Parker.
I'll see to that.
But
the men don't fare
I mean,
any better than the women in this era. The women are just eye candy and kind of stereotypical, and the men are equally as stereotypical. They're just like there to come in and save the day.
I mean, the worst of like the worst generic white guy lead in any of these monster movies of this time is the guy from The Mummy. I will give you $20 right now, DJ, if you can tell me the lead of The Mummy. What's his name?
I can't remember anything about The Mummy. I really didn't like The Mummy. That was my least favorite of that whole
you mean
series.
you don't remember Frank Wemple? He was played by David Manners, DJ. How could you forget him? Anyways,
sorry, Mr. Wemple.
So he's that. Hey, this guy,
Parker.
Parker. he's at least better than Frank. But yeah, anyway. But he's there. He fits the bill, right? You have impressive production, everything from the sets to the lighting to the cinematography, and in this one in particular, more than I would say even Frankenstein, the makeup is astonishing.
Yeah.
So you just have like lots of production here. You have
see the money on the screen.
Yes. The third thing is you have this great the real central performance is the villain. Who is played by a headlining actor who completely steals the show. You know, you have Lugosi, you have Karloff, here you have Lawton. And then finally...
And Lugosi.
Oh, yeah, you have him. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have Lugosi here for 2 scenes. He's wonderful. And then the last one on the checklist, it's under 90 minutes, baby. And this is the time when it's 70 minutes. Yeah!
Oh, I mean... I've been breezing through this whole pre-code horror collection. They're all under 90 minutes, and a lot of them are like 60 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah,
and it's
that was
breezy. We're doing double features. We're flying through these. It's nice. It's nice to just tell a complete story in 60 to 90 minutes. Like, why can't we do that anymore?
When my brother was living with me, and we would try to watch as many horror movies as we could in October, the Universal monsters was like the best way. If he worked a late shift and we just needed to get one down before going to bed, just pop on a Universal one. Like, they go down easy, baby. They're great. But anyways, I was just thinking, like, this definitely fits the bill of that. I'll just being perfectly honest, the pre-code horror is not my favorite era. It has a lot of hallmarks about it that I like, although there are aspects of it that I do find repetitive, and they can be a little bit of a tedious sit for me, especially in this time. And I know I really hate to be that guy, because I always try to like immerse myself in the period, and I can just enter a time period and like just kind of forget that this isn't the way movies are anymore, except for this very small sliver of time. The lack of musical score, I really notice, and I think it's only amplified by the white noise and the very early microphones and kind of the limitations to the mixing. It's the audio aspect does it doesn't drive me crazy or anything, but it does limit, I think, how much I can love one of these things. Even though there's a lot of visual like splendor to just take in.
Interesting.
And there are individual scenes that I absolutely love. The what is the law scene is like iconic. I love that scene. Anyways, I've been rambling now. So
no, I can totally see that. That makes sense. And I understand that, because I have had that with other pre-code films, because I've been watching through a ton of them. There are some that I don't like as well as others. One of those where the lack of sound really, I felt it, was Murders in the Zoo, which I just watched a couple days ago. This one I don't have that with, because there's so much on the screen to keep my eyes busy that I guess I don't think about the sound. And I think in places it actually like heightens the eeriness when there is no sound. Like when you see a beast man crawling up the tree up into the house. Like, I don't know. The silence works for me. Although I will say I do love the score, and I wish we could use it more. Like the score you only get at the very beginning and the very end. It is that kind of jungle drum beat adventure movie score, but
Mhm.
with a tinge of eeriness and horror to it. I think it's a perfect score. Like I love the opening titles with like the waves crashing on the water and the really
It's a
cool
really great
font.
idea for a sequence. Yeah.
It's such a cool opening titles. You got the font treatment over the water and it transitions perfectly and the score is perfect at the beginning and it's perfect at the end. Like right when he says don't look back and you turn around and it goes and the score drops in. Ah, I love it. I love it. So I would like to see it a little, I wish there was a little bit more score too, but it doesn't bother me with this one for some reason.
Yeah, and I guess maybe it isn't even necessarily it isn't necessarily score, although that is definitely something I notice. It's also just like sound effects. Like there will be people tussling and it is complete
Oh
silence.
yes, I do notice that. Yeah, yeah, like especially
Um,
when Loda like attacks the ape man and it's like
mhm.
it's very strange because there's no sound.
And
Um
that's fine. I think it just kind of makes for it can often make for a little bit of a dry experience.
yeah.
I know you and I have a little bit of disagreements over the James Whale Frankenstein movies. I need to be in the right mood to watch his first Frankenstein movie. I'm always in the mood to watch Bride of Frankenstein. And I
Yeah.
think just in those 4 years between them, just kind of the way technology had kind of progressed, by just 4 years later, I'm able to completely forget that like this is an old movie. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
just kind of is what it is.
And now I've now watched a James Whale movie in between those, which is The Old Dark House, which is on this list as well,
Mhm.
which is very interesting. I would love to hear your opinions on that one.
I would love to watch it.
Real quick, so we've briefly talked about it. Let's talk about the set design and the makeup because I think those are the real stars. Like behind Lawton, I think those are the stars. We've got I didn't mention it before. Makeup is by Wally Westmore, who did a lot of the makeup at this time. The Beastmen in this look terrifying, and I don't feel like I haven't seen any of the like newer adaptations of this or like remakes of this. I think there's been a few. I think Val Kilmer's in one of them, but
Yes.
I feel like and this might just be a product of like black and white cinema. I feel like the creatures cannot be as creepy. I feel like we don't do creatures like this anymore. Like they're so human, and it's probably because we can't do makeup like this anymore because it's probably really dangerous. And like I know there's like horror stories of like them like having to melt it off people's faces because it was like ruining their skin and like very dangerous.
Mhm.
But it looks amazing. It looks incredible. Like it's all this intricate, and they're used real hair back then, which you probably can't do anymore. Like we can't do anything cool anymore. But like, yeah, there's all like this hair. Everybody has different hair patterns on their face. Like Bela Lugosi's got this crazy poof. Like the
Mhm.
dog man, what's his name? Malink,
Something like that.
something like that. He's got like this. They even like extended his nose to give him like a dog like face. The two big wrestlers that they have in those roles, like they put hair like all over their body. Like it
Yeah.
looks so good. It's crazy.
Well, and it's amazing because there's a bonus feature here with Rick Baker and John Landis and
Yeah.
some guy who I guess is like a very avid archivist of props and costumes and stuff.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. That
And
one was cool.
they were just kind of talking about how um, I think like it's there's an offhand comment in that where they maybe had like a minute or two just to slap on the makeup, and it's like
What?
the like efficiency and like the the fast craft of doing this. Like it is like you have to be like not just like an artist, you have to be like some kind of next level like genius craftsman to just sort of know what you're doing with something that fast. And things
Yeah.
get close-ups and there's
Zoom ins.
sometimes
Yeah.
zoom ins and like it's like that hoof foot and like that the
Yeah.
different feet and like it all looks so good. And it looks, I don't know, like this is one of those things where like there's a still gallery actually on this disc. If anyone is interested, please look at
Oh,
them. You
I
get to
didn't check
see
that
all
out.
of these. They have so many of the creatures, just photos, like, and they're like a perfect focus. Like they are extremely impressive. A lot of them don't have like articulation because they're just like to be, occupying the backgrounds of scenes, but that doesn't take away from just like as an artifact, there's something so charming and impressive about it.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like most of them are just extras in the background and they still look really good, which is crazy. I mean, of course you're going to have like Lugosi looking good, and the main characters, but even the ones that are just there to scream and yell and attack the fortress at the end still look really cool. Speaking of the fortress,
do you have a favorite creature?
Do I have a favorite creature? You know who's interesting? He's not my favorite, but it's interesting that they're all like hairy men, and then there's one pig guy.
The pig guy is actually my favorite.
Yeah, see, he's like, there's a pig man. It's very interesting that they went mammals with everything. I guess pigs are mammals, but he doesn't have any hair. He's just like a naked pig guy. He looks really weird, and he's like, 2 humans, one like Lota. He gets this big line where he gets to speak. But yeah, he's fun.
That was I was really impressed by that one because you can tell it's like some kind of mask and makeup combination, going into
kind
like
of see it come over his face. Yeah.
But like at the same time, like it doesn't, like you can't really see a lot of the seams. Like there are like shots where, especially like in a medium wide, where like, my goodness, that looks like a pig man. Like I love that creature. I love looking at him.
Yeah, it's very creepy. So yeah, like I was gonna say, the set design, it's so cool, man. Like I would have wanted to stumble across this in the woods as a kid. Like it's like all overgrown with vines and foliage, and there's like trees growing up the structure, and people keep running up I want to run up that tree so bad. Like, and the cages are like built into the structure. It's incredible. I don't know what other set design Hans Dreyer has done, but he killed it with this film. I don't, and the fact that this is all shot on like a like Paramount's it's not even a location. It's like Paramount's like set. It looks really good.
Yeah, apparently they built 3 sets for like massive sets like on the Paramount Ranch for this.
Ranch, that's
a lot of the sea stuff was shot on location like several miles just off the coast of Los Angeles. But by the way, the sea shooting looks really good. A little scuffed up, a little beat up. That's just kind of par for the course when you have like a nautical shoot. I've just noticed that with a lot of these movies, except for Mutiny on the Bounty. That one's been preserved really well, but there are a few shots in that are pretty scuffed up second unit stuff. But
speaking of Mutiny on the Bounty, Stanley Fields, Captain Davies in this. He's also in Mutiny on the Bounty.
Oh, is he?
The jerk face guy who gets his pride hurt because he got punched in the face and then violently throws him off the ship, where he turns into like the dummy.
Yeah.
Such a funny shot where he's like, "You're getting off here," and then the dummy goes, "Wow!" Like, holy crap, you would have died.
Yeah, the dummy hits it, and then it's like they do I think a pretty good match cut from the different angle where it is a stunt performer rolling,
and he just rolls off. Yeah.
But like, yeah, that looked like it hurt.
And he just hops back up. It's like, hey, come back. We can talk a little bit about the additions because, so this is Paramount, like you said. Paramount had just had a big hit with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I stumble every time I say that now because in that movie they pronounce it Dr. Jekyll the whole time. So it's like really jarring. Now I don't know which way it's supposed to be. I'm like second guessing it every time. But Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, they mentioned in the commentary that was like a sexy horror, like thriller, like it got everyone in the theater. And I don't understand at all because I mean, there's like a burlesque, like she sings burlesque in like the first scene, but then she is in like an abusive relationship for a lot of the movie, and it's very, very, very dark. And it's super dark. So I can't imagine that being an erotic thriller movie, but they wanted to do that again, apparently, with this. And this is what they made. I don't know what people were into back then, apparently, because, I mean, I understand they could cast like a young 19-year-old Loda, and she's wearing like, basically a bikini the whole time. But how can you be turned? I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but I don't know how you could be turned on during this.
I think it honestly does just come down to, we got beautiful girls in this movie. Look how little clothes one of them's wearing. Ooh, she kind of rubs up close to one of them. Like, you know what I mean? It's something like that. Although,
yeah, but it's so disturbing. Like, I guess that's just for the posters. They put that on the poster to get people to
certainly.
come, and then it's not.
Well, it's just kind of fascinating how horror has changed, because, you know, I guess even all the way up through the 80s, you do kind of have a similar thing where it's a kind of more, it's not just about scares. It's like, this is kind of the little package where we can wrap up a bunch of lurid things, right?
Mhm.
More taboo things, right? Something that's maybe more scandalous, something that's, maybe scary, maybe something like, ooh, like we're going to, say what it's like to feel like God, like, oh, this is all taboo in this time. And that's, maybe exciting, to a potential ticket buyer. And then all the way up through the 80s, you have, stuff like Friday the 13th, which is, you're seeing nudity, you're getting blood, you're getting kind of that same sort of scandalous kind of taboo.
Mhm.
You can't get that kind of stuff anywhere. And that's sort of gone away, where horror has become, as time has marched on, more and more just about, well, is it scary? Are you going to get scared? And that in today's day and age, and for the last, I want to say 15 years, means boo. Like, how many jumps can you get out? Although stuff like A24, is,
They're doing good
doing
stuff.
more of the other stuff, more atmospheric stuff.
Genuinely terrifying stuff that scars you for life.
Oh yeah. I was there to watch Hereditary.
Hereditary.
I'm not forgetting that. But I just think it is interesting as like a time capsule where, like, if like it's not even necessarily that it needs to actually be sexy. It was just perceived as erotic and sexy because you were just seeing skin. I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Where I was going with that is those are the additions. Like, there's no women, neither of the women characters are from the book. So like they added the female beast man, and then they added his fiance who has to come in at the end, to like I said, to recreate the magic of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I think it works for this. Like I said, I know H.G. Wells wasn't a fan. I'm sure it's not exactly what he wanted it to be, but as its own piece, I think it's really cool. I think Loda is great. She might have been an actor, but we don't know for sure. Like, she won like a contest. They did like a Panther Woman contest. Like, apparently like 60,000 people signed up, and they whittled it down to like a top 4 and flew them out to California, and she won. She's like from Chicago. She's just some 19-year-old girl, but I think her like doe-eyed silence works for the character that she's playing. I mean, she's supposed to be playing this person who doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't know anything about the real world, is kind of just curious, and she has those big curious eyes. I don't know. I liked her in this.
I do too. She's a standout for me in terms of the performance. I mean, I think Charles Laughton obviously just owns this movie, but she's memorable.
She is.
I think what's interesting is that you do have, like, this is still, we're basically a decade out from the real beginning of film noir, and we have the color coding with the women, the good blonde, and then the kind of more tragic or duplicitous, darker haired, kind of like a femme fatale, kind of proto femme fatale. That goes even all the way back to Sunrise from 5 years earlier.
That's pretty cool.
So that's kind of interesting. But another thing about, just like, this is pre-code, and we should probably, if anyone who doesn't know this, that's the Hays Code. I find it very interesting how it's showing us things. So is her name Ruth? Is that like his
yes.
dame? Mm-hmm. His dame that he's trying to get back home to?
Ruth Thomas.
They never kiss, I don't think. They kind of embrace with their arms.
Yeah.
And that almost feels like a Hays Code restriction. Now, the Hays Code existed, but it really didn't get implemented until 2 years from this in 34. But what is interesting is that you do see him kiss Loda.
Yeah, which is
you get to
much more
see that.
disturbing because she's a panther.
Yeah, but I think it's also trying to signal to the audience maybe something more, right? Like maybe he is, the idea that you're sending is that you're seeing this more explicit physical interaction with her versus when you see his actual woman that, you know, he's trying to get home to. They only really embrace with their arms and hug, and they never like really touch faces ever. And so it's kind of interesting that we're showing more with Loda than we are showing with Ruth.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I bought them together. I think obviously if this was a newer movie or a longer movie, we would get more scenes with him and Loda before he does that because it is kind of sudden. They've only really, and I don't know, maybe there's scenes that maybe there's a little bit of a time jump. I don't know how long it took them to find the island, but we only get to see them in a couple scenes before he does that. But who knows? He's been out to sea forever. He's just a lonely man. And she's very attractive. So I'll give him that. But yeah, she's great. She also shows up again in Murders in the Zoo and not as memorable. I don't think that's her fault. I think the character is just not as interesting. But yeah, she's very memorable in this. But yeah, I don't think anyone else is. I did like Captain Davies. He was funny. I really like the scene where she's Ruth is actually pretty cool. I like Ruth. Like she like goes up to him and like shoves him, and she's like, what, where is he? And he just kind of brushes her off, and she's like, no, where is he? And like she makes him tell her, and then she's like, I'm gonna talk to the captain of the guard or whatever she talks to, and he's like, go ahead. And then we see the scene of him being dragged into the office, and he has like no words. Everything the guy says, he's like, yes sir, yes sir. I really like that scene. He's like, I'll revoke your license. He's like, you wouldn't like that, would you? He's like, no, sir. I really like that scene.
Yeah, for me, that Ruth character, like it kind of just, it's that actress, and apparently she's from Freaks, which you've now seen, and I have not.
She is she's the good girl in Freaks. She's the good female character in Freaks, and she's great in that. I think apparently a lot of her scenes and her plot line got cut out. That's a part of the 30 minutes that was lost, which that's a lost film now that I need someone to find a print of because that hurts me so much because I love it.
Maybe it's sitting right next to the Magnificent Ambersons.
we can only both
hope. Be happy someday.
Would that be a YouTube video if that ever got found? We would be freaking out.
Our hearts exploding. Like
that's our death. That's when we record our death on camera. Like you said, the female leads and the male leads both are pretty stereotypical in this era. The real reason you're coming to see it is for the big iconic villain. And those are the standout pre-code films. Of all the films I've seen, the best ones are the ones with the real iconic looking villains. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. X, he's great. He's got an iconic look. He's got the devil beard and the white suit, and he's just having so much fun. Like he's so creepy. Like the darkest things will be happening, and he'll just be like over there, just smiling and like giggling to himself. He's so like he brings so much to this that I know wasn't on the page. And
see, it's so fascinating because like they talk about this in one of the features. Film historian David J. Scull.
Yeah, that was a good feature. He's very well thought out and well spoken. And he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and he talks about specifically Peter Lorre in, I think it's called Mad Love. Is that what it's called? He talks about Charles Laughton, and then he also talks about, I think, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And he kind of talks about how he doesn't really come out and say it, but they're kind of queer coded, and there's like an eccentricity to it. And I remember hearing some critiques of the character Joel Cairo from The Maltese Falcon, who's also played by Peter Lorre, and how there is kind of like this stereotype, scary, foreign, possibly homosexual, like villain kind of character that you need to be scared of. And I've heard critiques of that, but like, I'm sure there is certainly like critique to be had, but I love these characters. Yeah, they're so much fun to watch. They are so much fun to watch. And, I just I love Charles Laughton. Like he like, and like you're right, he's bringing so much that's not on the page. I don't think like I think there's an element of kink to what he's doing. Like there's this thing where he does seem to like really be reveling like the sadism and the torture and like it's not just the innovation. Like there is some kind of personal pleasure he's getting out of it.
Mhm.
And it's like it's fascinating. And the sort of impish quality he has, like there's like a sexual element to his like just persona and the way he carries himself, and it's like you can't not keep your eyes off him. He's fabulous. He's great. I
Yeah.
love him.
He's like a little cherub. He's got like this little chubby.
Yes. Yes, he does. That's a great call.
uh, yeah, he's fascinating. He's anytime he's on screen, from his like big, huge, like eccentric hubris scenes right before he gets punched in the face. Like he's so confident that he's like talking to the guy that he just did all this to, and he doesn't even think that. Of course, the guy's gonna punch you in the face. He's just like a sailor. From those big, loud those scenes all the way back to like the little subtle scenes, like when he burns the ship. He's like, I can't ever imagine how it happened. And he's like looking over at his doctor. And the doctor character is great. He's like,
I like him too.
it's unraveling throughout the movie, and he just keeps seeing, okay, this guy, he's realizing this guy is completely lost it. Like, and he finally gives it up at the end, which is a great scene. What finally pushes him over the edge is when he's like, he notices his like beast man looking at Ruth, and he's like, the fact that he just like completely he's like Penguin from Batman Returns. He just completely changes his plan like multiple times in this movie. He's like, oh, I gotta get this loaded to mate with a human, and he's like, oh, it's not gonna work. The beast is coming back. Dang it! And then he looks down and she's crying. And he's like, oh, she's crying. She is human. I'm gonna do it. I can do it again. And he like switches back, and then he sees the ape man staring at Ruth, and he's like, oh, never mind. Plan B, don't need her anymore because he can rape this woman, and he can, and that'll be still one of my creations mating with a human. So he like completely switches to that, and that's what pushes the doctor over the end. He's like, you knew this. This was your plan, you psychotic lunatic. I'm out of here. Which is so dark, and it's so hilarious to me that the one thing that's like a sign of the times is he finally reunites with his fiance that he hasn't seen in forever. He's in this horrifying place where there's beastmen literally like trying to kill them, and there's a doctor who's insane, and he still puts her in her own room, and he goes and stays with the captain in another room.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No, you stay with her. What are you doing? That's just the time on film. Even pre-code, we couldn't show them staying in the same room, I guess. But he leaves, and then of course, guy breaks through the bar. That would be horrifying, by the way.
And that is good lighting. Like the
Yes.
way, like it's so dark. It's a dark room, and you have the dark bars, and there's like the dark foliage outside, and there's like the man in like dark hair, right?
Yeah.
Like
like
but it's lit so coherently. Like wonderful.
He's incredible. I gotta watch every movie that guy did the cinematography for, because I that's the, besides Lawton, that's like my big thing from this. I loved how it looks so much.
Another thing about Lawton though is he does have that kind of impish playfulness, but he does carry himself with authority. Like you do buy his, like everyone is subservient to him.
Oh yeah,
and because then when he pulls out the whip and like lays the law down.
I was just gonna say, because he had learned to use a whip in a movie right before this, so that was kind of kismet, because he's whipping it around like crazy in this movie. He's so confident at the end that he's gonna take on the whole horde. Like he's just like, they're like, come on. He's like, no, I got this. And he just goes out there with just his whip and starts whipping them. He's awesome. He plays both sides really well. He's a lot of fun, but he's also genuinely kind of terrifying and has a presence. He's great. He's, like you said, he's the standout. I wish, it kind of bums me out that they changed the title of the movie. Like I kind of wish it was just called The Island of Dr. Moreau, like the book, because Dr. Moreau is the thing. Lost Souls is kind of just generic. I don't know what they're really trying to go for with that. I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, it's not like people are being turned into animals. It's the animals being turned into people. So it's not like they lost souls. It's like, did they maybe gain souls? I don't know.
Island of Gain Souls didn't have the same ring to it. But no, I wish they would have kept the title, because Dr. Moreau is the reason you're there.
I do have an observation.
Sure.
I have not read the book, so this could be one of those things where maybe this person was taking inspiration from the book. Maybe it's this movie. Maybe it's both. It could be all. But the first thing we see in this movie is there's a castaway off the port bow, and it is the exact same as the opening of Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, where Will Turner it's like the same shot, like where he's in the fog and like, right? Where they pull him up and out.
Yeah.
Now, obviously it's different, but like, I don't know. I'd buy Gore Verbinski loved this movie.
Yeah, I could see that. There's some similarities with the mutiny that the crew like turning on him. We didn't mention before, but that's the ending is, I guess I don't want to give it away, but there is a scene in Freaks very similar to this where there's kind of a mutiny amongst the animal like humans, then they all kind of attack someone. I think even I don't know if it was on the commentary or one of the supplements, but someone went so far as to say this was the rich man's Freaks, and they kind of recaptured that. Well, I would say magic, but that was kind of a disaster. That whole release of that film. But that's like the ending of that is kind of the one big thing that everyone remembers from that. So it's cool that we got to see it again here and done in a different enough way that I didn't feel like it was repeating anything, because I have seen both of those films.
Isn't it wild
in
how
rapid
fast
succession
the industry moved back then?
All of these came out in 32. I don't get it. Like
they're all like responding to one another, like what's popular, like what's going on in the culture. Like that's nuts.
Well, they just made movies quick and got them out quick, man. Like
I think the commentary says they shot this in 5 weeks.
Crazy. Like, and it makes you wonder how much of this is just accidents. Like all this amazing cinematography, and like you said, they threw the makeup together real fast. Like, how much of it is intention and how much of it is just happy coincidence that it all worked out so well? I don't know. I don't care, because I like the final piece. I like the final product, but there's got to be there. I mean, like we said, there's a little bit of luck, a little bit of magic in there. So I don't want to out you, but the first time you saw this, I think you gave it 3 stars on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it more this time?
About the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I enjoy the movie. I will certainly watch it again. Although I don't know if I'd ever watch it outside of October. It'd be one of those things where if I just want to throw on, there's always going to be a time where I'm in the mood for a 30s pre-code movie, and so I've got a few of the Universal movies on disc, and I got this, and I'll throw on what I got.
Okay. I mean, 3 is a great score. That's a 6 out of 10. I don't have any problem with that. I just want to know where you were this viewing.
Yeah. No, it's certainly a positive 6, right? Like it's not one out of disappointment. Like of this era, like that's honestly on the upper end in terms of just like my enjoyment.
It's this is almost as much as you can like a film from this period, is what you're kind of saying.
Yeah, I would say I enjoy James Whale's Universal movies more than this. I like the first Frankenstein and The Invisible Man more, although Invisible Man I think is 35.
Yeah, it's late. It's after this. I love Invisible Man. That's my favorite Universal.
It's so good.
Film. It's so fun.
Claude Rains is so awesome, and he never even shows his face. Like he's amazing.
It's so good. Another film that H.G. Wells did not love, but
well, let's talk about that. H.G. Wells apparently was very interested in cinema as a storytelling art form, but he didn't like his movies being, and I think it's because he wrote it for that. So cinema should come up with their own stories.
And he did. He did eventually get into writing films. I have it back here on the shelf. He wrote Things to Come right there in the orange. He wrote that film. So he was very much a proponent of film. He just didn't like adaptations of his work, I guess. And makes sense. Which, I mean, makes sense because if you've read Invisible Man, which I have, very different thing. Very different thing. There's no antagonist in that film. It is very much a character study of the guy who is the protagonist becoming the antagonist. You don't like to see him that way. Whereas when you watch the film, I love every second he's on screen. Like I'm enjoying him being the villain. So very different things, but I like both of them just as much, honestly. I think in the essay, they said that the book is mostly set up and it's mostly just a premise and not really a plot. And this kind of goes to some places the book doesn't. It's been almost a decade since I've read the book, so I can't really speak to it. But I do really remember liking the premise, and then not remembering how exactly it ends. So it makes sense because it was basically like a treatise to end animal testing. Like that's why H.G. Wells wrote it. Apparently, was to stop vivisections because he was much more interested in like political commentary with his science fiction, which I think this still has, even though it is more entertaining and fun and super creepy. But it's great. I highly recommend it. If you don't have time to watch through all of the pre-code horror collection on Criterion Channel, which I do recommend, this is one I would definitely check out. This would be on my top 5 of that set. I actually really do love this period. I could go back to these. Like, it's so
and honestly, like, you know, I'm not as high on this as you are, but I love hearing you talk about it, and I'm thankful that you brought me on to talk about it, because I do like the history of it. I will say, I think Criterion's package here is very good, just in terms of the supplements. Because what I like about the essay is it does kind of touch on some social stuff that, you know, was on my mind while I was watching it. You know, the sort of aesthetically, the adventure stuff and pulp adventure stuff. I understand. I can maybe understand where, you know, its heart is in terms of like where it's coming from, but I do think there are aspects aesthetically that have maybe not aged super well. Not that I'm necessarily holding it against the movie, but it is something I notice. And like the essay talks about that, and I really liked it. Like, I think that there is this tendency to infantilize history, where people just go, oh, well, it was different then, whatever. It's like, no, they weren't stupid. They, like, apparently when this like opened in Australia, they were like, yeah, the Aboriginals can't watch this because they will hate it.
That was
like
fascinating.
Because like, yeah, it does kind of look at other races as animal people, and like that's not like, I understand maybe what H.G. Wells or whoever is adapting it, what they're trying to do there, but I can understand why someone might be offended by that, you know. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Well, he was talking more about animals, so yeah, I think that was just the 30s sensibilities creeping in on it a little bit. Because I never knew that. I never knew that other countries, because we don't have that. Like to think that that you would have to have in your rating system a built-in rating. I think it was called NEN or something.
yeah,
That is specifically not to show it to specific people. That's crazy. Like, not just age.
Yeah.
Like, we just have age ratings. That's how our ratings work. But yeah, that was really interesting. I didn't know that either.
But it also does tie in. Well, I do think, you know, obviously, I think it's a little problematic, and not that makes it bad. It's just an aspect of pulp adventure that I've made my peace with. But what's also tied into that is an interesting look at colonization, which is apparently what the book is all about, where they are trying to take animals from different areas and trying to make them civilized, you know, and like it's sort of like this colonization metaphor. And I wasn't even thinking about that while I was watching it, and it makes me think about it and appreciate the premise more.
Well, surprisingly relevant. Like, the fact that all of these books, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, Island of Dr. Moreau, Dracula, Frankenstein, the fact that these are so relevant still, even though they were written in the late 1800s, is crazy. Good authors, all 4 of them.
Yeah.
They're way ahead of their time. I especially love H.G. Wells and Robert Louis Stevenson. I do appreciate. See, we're kind of on opposite sides here. I know you're not a big fan of Dracula, but I actually prefer this and Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde to the Universal stuff. And I don't know why that is. I think there's just kind of I think it's stylistically, maybe. I don't know. There's more of a. I'm not going to try to explain it, because that'll be a whole nother video. But yeah, I really like this one. Maybe it's the adventure aspect, but Dr. Jekyll doesn't have that either. I don't know. It's just something about.
There's a viciousness to this movie that is not in the Universal stuff.
That's what I think it is. I think those are more stilted. Maybe that's a good word. Like, they're kind of theatrical, whereas this is kind of grungy and dirty. And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is very much that way. But that's it. That is Island of Lost Souls. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. Hopefully you haven't made it this far and haven't seen it. But if you haven't seen it and what we talked about here intrigues you, I highly recommend you check it out. Connor also liked it quite a bit too. This is a recommend. I don't think we've had a Criterion Corner yet where we've been on opposite ends of the spectrum, which will be interesting when we get there. Because I can't wait to.
I relish that opportunity. That'll be very fun discussion, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll start screaming at each other and be at each other's throats. That'll be fun. But this one, we're pretty much on the same page. This was my October pick. It'll be your turn next time, sir, to give us a movie. I can't wait to see what you have for me next time on episode 10. Big one. We're hitting double digits. Criterion Corner episode 10. That's going to be fun. Thank you guys all for watching or listening or however you like to experience this podcast. We don't care. We're just glad you're here. But be sure to let us know what you think in the comments section. If you've seen this film, we'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't know about you, Connor, but I love reading all the comments and discussing things with those guys. We've got a really good community building. That I love talking to these guys about movies, especially you guys, the troopers who hang in there for this hour-long podcast that we do. You guys are the real fans. We will see you next time. Keep collecting physical media, and we'll be back with more videos real soon.